Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
I am drinking Peerless bourbon. Peerless is that's a bourbon that was founded in the late 1800s in Henderson, Kentucky, but then shut down during Prohibition. And then in 2015, they resurrected the brand in Louisville, and they established its own distillery, started making small batch bourbon, and they've got some really good flavor profiles, a lot of higher rye content. It's really tasty. They've got a few different expressions. This is just the small batch, but they've got like a double oaked and a single barrel, a couple of different ones. But yeah, it seems like it's gaining a lot of popularity.
And you like it?
Yeah, it's really good.
Cool.
I'm easy to please, though, so there's that.
Well, our tradition has been that I go out and buy a decent bottle that we've got something to share, but I did not get to the store. So I'm still working my way through my $6 bottle of cheap rum. And if this is not evidence of a guy who's cheap, literally this right here is about $1.65's worth of that rum, and I am choking it down. I made an old fashioned out of it with about 2 shots of simple syrup and a half a bottle of Angostura bitters, and it's still terrible.
Yeah, great. Well, you got to get off this trend. Lately, you've been on this trend of all this cheap rum here. It's like we're going to have to get your game up here a little bit.
Yeah, we don't have great. Maybe next time I'm in Chicago, I'll go looking for some interesting stuff. I almost sent you an article that I saw. I got it just the other day. It was like recent liquor awards, and it had all the different spirit categories and kind of a top 2 or 3 in each. And there were some really interesting rums there, but I don't have access to. I could do better than the $6 bottle, but don't have access to the really fancy stuff. But maybe I should get something kind of a showstopper soon.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on? I think what I would like to say first of all, not to hog us with the news, but the fall of the House of Assad, and I guess a moment of prayer for peace or less violence. I hope that the devil versus the devil you don't. I don't know what we're in for there, but that was a regime good for us to be rid of, and I hope for some more freedom and peace for the Syrian people.
Yeah, totally. It struck me as a bit of a moment like in Romania when they ran was it Ceausescu or whatever? They killed him, but
yeah.
I think it's awesome seeing the people storming the palace of the dictator, and the pictures of people streaming through there and ripping crap off the walls, and it's like good for them.
The guys who got into the barn with with all the Ferraris.
Yeah.
Like, were the keys in the cars? Like what did you steal? I stole a TV. No, I stole an '89 Testarossa.
Yeah, right. It's really I don't know. It's kind of like you go over to France and you go to Versailles, and I'm not a good history guy, but whatever Louis it was living in Versailles when they came barging down the door. You think about these dictators in their last moments, like, and you see there's this, as I recall, at Versailles, like where the guy's bedroom was, like the guy could see like from the bedroom window, the gate getting plowed over and the people coming for him. And it's kind of like, it's just really, I don't know. I find it fascinating to think about, the guy obviously knew he was killing people right and left and murdering everybody. And he must have known his father was doing the same thing. But I imagine also, I mean, the only way you'd be able to live with yourself is if you convinced yourself that it was okay, and so you're living in this fiefdom, like you're insulated and everything's going to be okay. But it's like, I don't know. It's just, I'm really, I love to, get interview the guy in prison and be like, okay, what was going through your mind when, oh shit, no, they're actually coming for me,
Don't you
because you think of these
think?
guys as being all powerful and like they're not threatened, but obviously, he got his ass thrown out of there.
Well, a couple things on that. I think other commentators noted, you know, I don't think anybody saw this coming. They thought he's got a little bit of noise happening around the periphery, and then just in an instant, it changed. And but I also have to think, you know, if you run a repressive regime for a living, if that's your chosen profession, like you've got to know that you're only a heartbeat away from a revolution. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
wouldn't it feel weird? You know, you got all the stuff, you got all the Ferraris, but even then, like, you got all the Ferraris. He can't go driving the Ferrari around Aleppo. Like
right.
what you live in, and I think this is interesting. You kind of live in prison a little bit, although it's a nice prison. I think about this with the British royal family. I mean, we're
Yeah,
way Roman on topic, but right, like King Charles, I don't, the good news is you're king. The bad news is that like you got a staff of people who tell you what to do from the moment you get up to
yeah,
you're not really making any choices. There's no taking a day off and going and hanging out in the country or sitting by the fire. You're in the spotlight all the time.
yeah. I was really honestly surprised it took them, what, 13 years to get him. I mean, it
Yeah.
seemed like back in 11 that
Hmm.
they could have taken him down. But I imagine also, his forces are pretty depleted now. They weren't,
Right.
13 years ago. And people didn't know how brutal he could be. And he was the worst of the worst. I mean,
People have said, I wonder your take on this, that it is not a great look for Putin to have put his eggs in that basket.
well, I mean, how much of this fall is because Big Brother Putin is so preoccupied in Ukraine? I mean, he doesn't have the bandwidth to go fight on two fronts. I think what's really exciting is Iran could be next to topple
Yeah.
because, if you think about Iran's power base, well, there's Hezbollah, and they've gotten their asses handed to them and all their leadership killed. And then you got Syria, who, they're under sanction. I mean, nobody's selling a lot to Iran. I mean, Syria, I mean, they were counting on them for oil sales and everything else. And the proxy fighter, I think there's a really good opportunity to kind of re-level the Middle East in a positive way. I'm fearful of, you know, who's our ally over there. I mean, that's the hard
Yeah.
part.
Well, I mean, in general, the list of Middle Eastern countries in revolution that's worked out well for the world is a pretty short list. It tends to be, out of the frying pan into the fire. That's my worry, and I hope that that's not the case. So,
I think it's smart of Israel to take out their military. This is a good time to, weaken their forces. Because, I mean, if these guys turn out to be the best people in the world, well, Israel help them rebuild. But that's,
right. And maybe a decimated military is a less attractive prize for people to try to take over. You know what I mean? Like maybe
yeah,
that lowers the stakes.
yeah.
Well, we'll,
Well, and
uh,
I'm hopeful that, like some of the trend that we see in the Gulf countries where you've got peace, prosperity. Now, that said, I mean, none of them are great. I
Human
mean,
rights.
the human rights in the UAE aren't great. I mean, it looks great if you're going and hanging out there, but try getting imprisoned there. It sucks. But
Yeah.
at least there's some semblance of stability and some bit of normalcy, where they're not just killing everybody right and left. So I just think how amazing it would be if someday like we could go on a vacation to Tehran and like that
Yeah.
wasn't a forbidden thing.
Years ago, I worked at Utah State University, high mountain desert climate, and it's very similar, apparently, to Iran or much of the territory in Iran, and it's a land grant university. So back in the 60s and 70s, there had been a lot of exchange programs because the agriculture was similar. And so you had people that would study at Utah State, and there's a long history of that. And then, of course, that dried up immediately with the fall of the Shah. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like an amazing place. Like skiing, like Iran's got, well, you got the Caspian Sea, you've got the high mountains. Like, it sounds like a pretty incredible place.
A lot of these places that you can't imagine a world where it's peaceful and you could enjoy, like, think about Afghanistan. I mean,
Mm,
the mountain ranges. I mean, it's just so sad that all these places are such shit shows that, you're never going to be able to really. I mean, if some of these people could view the realm of the possible, it's too bad that people can't get out of their own way.
yeah. Um, by the by, we watch YouTube a lot. There's a couple that we watch that are sailing in the Caribbean, and a bunch of people that we've watched were in Caracas, Venezuela, and the pictures and the videos of what it's like to be in Caracas are amazing. It looks breathtaking. But then this couple went along and visited an outlying island in Venezuela, and they've been attacked in the middle of the night while they were on a passage. And yeah, like unfortunately, I think Venezuela is on my no-go list at the moment.
Did
You know,
you?
and,
So
and
you weren't on that cruise when we were kids? We went down there.
I
I
never
guess
went to Venezuela.
that must have been one you were gone on. We went. It
It
was
was
like a
one that the
southern.
family took you on and left me behind
Well,
for.
but you got to go to Australia, so that was why.
Yeah.
Just for those listening, poor Kent did go to Australia when he was in high school. Then that was held over him for years. Like, well, you did get to go to Australia, but we went to like a cruise port down there, and we took a car into Venezuela or into Caracas, and it was a cool looking place. Now not so much. Now you're probably fearing for your life, but at the time it was awesome.
Well, here's to peace, and here's to wishing the best for
Yeah,
people in these challenged places. Hey, you're going to have to educate me a little bit. I saw a headline but didn't read the article. You mentioned we've got some drone action happening on the East Coast, hey?
been traveling all week, and I haven't been in the news a lot. But supposedly, everybody's seeing like dozens of drones flying over parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and like it's beyond like the normal Art Bell fan that sees something said thinks it's a UFO. It's like everybody's seeing it and nobody can explain it. But then it sounds like the officials are saying, well, it could just be airplanes and it's no big deal. And then everybody's, oh, that's BS. It's more than airplane, So
Yeah. Well, I think back to the Chinese balloon thing, what was it, a year or two ago? I hope I'm wrong, but I have these fears of kind of a very asymmetrical warfare kind of environment. Like, I think we could be really surprised by some of the technological things that are out there that, I don't know. I don't know enough to know whether our military is up to speed on things, but I remember the discussion about the hypersonic missiles that apparently the Russians have got perfected and maybe the Chinese, and we don't have one that can do that. It's kind of an interesting thing. We've got all of the muscle and all of the good Lord, all of the dollars spent on defense, but are we spending it in the right place?
yeah,
And does the easy money, this is Does the easy money mean that you do expensive things rather than innovative things?
I mean, there's like thousands of sightings of all these things and dozens in the sky. And
Aren't they large? I saw somewhere
yeah,
these are not like somebody's DJI Phantom. They're like a serious thing.
right. Well, and like I said, it is funny reading the news. It's kind of like it was a little bit like our episode we did on the politics of UFOs. It's like, you know, politics gets into it. Well, no, it's misinformation. There's nothing to see here. Everything's okay. And then like, no, it's a cover up. It's a conspiracy. You know, it's like people are going to find a way to make everything into some place. So
It's all a mirror, just showing you what you already decided.
it is a little crazy that nobody can really figure it out. I mean, you wouldn't think like because somebody's saying, well, it's airplanes. Well, okay, if it's airplanes, that's pretty easy to figure out. You know, they all have transponders, and we have a record of like
Right.
that is something you could track down. But a lot of people, like the governor, I don't know if this is the like the Maryland governor said, yeah, I saw myself. I witnessed dozens of large drones in the sky above my residence, 25 miles from the nation's capital, for like 45 minutes flying around.
Wow.
Um, is it like the crop circles or something? Is there some jackass out there who's doing all this? And we've got these Walmart drones here around us that will fly you, half dozen eggs if you run out. So maybe the
You've
Walmart.
done that before? Have you done it?
Yeah, the Walmart up the street does it. It's like a little package, and it only holds like 1 pound of something. I mean, it's like, hey, can I get a Diet Coke and a candy bar? That's handy. But I do think it's only a matter of time before, I mean, the sky's going to be filled up with Amazon, and that's going to, and even this little thing up the road with the Walmart things, like in the summertime, you're outside and you're hearing them, if Amazon starts doing that, I mean, the skies are going to be full of those.
Yeah, that's strange. Other news, United Health CEO shot to death in New York. What a just a terrible story. I think about how do you talk about this? The reports of the killer being treated as kind of a folk hero. I mean, I just want to say 100% that I think that there's no room for that kind of violence in our society. But what does it tell you when people look at the facts of the story? This guy shot a company CEO on the streets of Manhattan. Like, on what planet do you not condemn that? And what kind of underlying social problems are there that people think that that's okay to even contemplate that?
Well, I don't know if you saw, I sent you that article out of Zero Hedge. I don't know if you ever read Zero Hedge.
Not
It's a
one
lot
that I
of
frequent often, but
it's
yeah.
a lot of financial stuff. It's kind of like I mean, these are my words. I don't know if people agree. It's kind of like it's kind of a libertarian type viewpoints often.
Oh, okay.
But this article, it was interesting. They said, it talked about, and they're just spitballing, but it was kind of like, is there any relation to this sudden collapse of Syria, which everybody thought was, I mean, to your point, it shouldn't shock anybody. It shouldn't shock the Assad family that they were going to get overthrown. I mean, it was going to happen, but it seemed like they weren't in direct threat. And this thing like took off like wildfire. And it's awesome. It did, but it was kind of like, I don't think like a month ago we'd have been thinking, yeah, I bet Assad's going to fall next month. It just wasn't on anybody's
Hmm.
radar. And similar, like this CEO thing, is that a departure? Like they're going to start
Mm.
targeting CEOs, which, yeah, the thing though, like in these things, it's like to give credence to some asshole that goes and does something like this, like he's some mastermind. No, I'm sorry. You're a jackass and you did something horrible and you need to pay. It's not like, your manifesto makes you some kind of genius, So I mean, I don't put a
Right.
lot of credence into how like it's some grandiose scheme, but their point is just like these are two events that happen very near each other that were unexpected, and are they door openers? Is it a door opener to more powerful people getting assassinated and is a door opener to more disruption.
Yeah,
Not sure
that
that it is,
blink
but
of an eye change. And I think a lot of things happen that way. Like the temperature slowly rises, and a lot of times the people that are leading the show don't realize how much the universe has changed underneath them. I will say, I mean, this is kind of a mea culpa sort of way. I think this is the case for a lot of Democrats in the aftermath of the election. And it's been interesting to see the struggle with kind of the self reflection on, you know, with all of the things that are the known quantity of Trump that that are repugnant to me and I think to a lot of people, that even as known as that is for him to win, uh, I think it's a colossal underestimation of how far out of touch a lot of people were. And until and unless the left deals with what happened there, like that's not good for the country for, a sizable portion of the electorate to be out to sea and unaware of the depth of the frustration of people.
yeah. Well, and it's also like we've talked to, it's people getting used to the new lines that have been drawn, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, and again, I've said this, if you were 12 during the first Trump administration and now you're a voter, like he was president, it doesn't seem like, oh my gosh, it's the end of democracy if he wins, because they came about when this was a thing. They don't remember a time when our politics
Well,
weren't crazy.
yes, but my only differing there, it's not exactly like they were born and it was Thomas Jefferson before them. And, maybe there's a couple of scrolls with some documentation. I mean, there's, hundreds of hours of videotape that can get anybody's point across. So, it's not like there's anything unknown.
No, no, fair enough. I guess I'm just saying that I will admit that I'm still a little whiplashed. I'm a little whiplashed. I feel like we're beating a dead horse, what we've talked about before. I'm whiplashed by the change within the Republican Party. I really am. And if it's a good thing or it's just a neutral thing, that's fine. But I think even after some dialogue, you would agree that it's a very different Republican Party than it was.
Absolutely.
And I think the Democratic Party is too, but maybe in less obvious ways.
Well, I think the purpose of our little podcast ought to be that, like, over time, like, we're going to do this consistently. In 10 years from now, you're going to be a mega hat wearing Trump supporter, and I'm going to be a Bernie Sanders liberal. Like that would be we'll see if we can redraw our own lines.
That would be success. That would be success.
That will mean we actually indulge in a lot of alcohol over Well, do you
What
want to
else
talk
is
about
new?
housing? We talked about doing
Yeah.
the totally
Yeah.
different subject, but we Kent and I are always trading before these and thinking about what we're going to talk about. And you talked about the housing shortage. I thought, man, that's really interesting. And the thing I like about some of these topics is, like, I feel like sometimes if we talk about just the current events, it's easier to be, maybe both of us, to be a little intellectually lazy, in the sense that, like, well, I'm gonna go to the right corner and you're going to go to the left corner and we'll come back with our arguments. But, like, some of these things cross a lot of boundaries, and that makes it
Totally.
really fun.
Yeah, I agree. And you don't have easy talking points, you know, coming right off of Fox News or MSNBC about these because they're more macro issues. We have a housing shortage in this country, and that's fueling a lot of things. I think, I'm not making this up. I'm not alone in this. That the despair by a lot of 30-year-old males in this country about their ability ever to buy a home in this country is, if not the driver, I think it's certainly evidence of the kind of disconnect that we've got, that again, I go back to the election. What's hard for me to get my head around is that I think things are pretty good in the country right now. Like I'm pretty happy. I own my home. I'm kind of rolling towards what retirement's going to look like. My 401k is doing okay. Like I think the country's great. And I don't really understand people that are in like blow it up mode. But I think housing is one of those issues that really paints the picture of the difference between, big segments of our population who are on the one side rocking it and on the other side in total despair.
Yeah, I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I think when I was looking at, and that was a good article you sent, but then when I was thinking about what the housing shortage is currently, I want to say how many new houses are built each year. It's
Sorry.
somewhere like 2 million, and I want to say like the shortage is like, I mean, it's like millions.
Yeah.
2023, 1.42 million new housing units. Oh, here's yeah, past decade. So 1,000,014 scale, and then kind of up and down a little bit. There was a little bit of a dip, obviously, with COVID and everything, and then 1.42 million.
Okay. So without easy political lines, without the easy autopilot corner to run to, when you hear that, when you think about that,
And let me just add,
oh,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
seeing here is a deficit of 4 to 6 million homes.
Well, what does that deficit mean, though? I mean, just for clarity, I mean, it's not like we've got 4 to 6 million families that are on the street. What is the shortage? Is that young people living at home with their parents and ready to go but can't find a place? Do you know what I mean? Like what comprises that shortage?
Yeah, well, and what I'm seeing is a lot of those people are either in overcrowded housing, where they've
Okay.
got a bunch of roommates and other situations. They may be in temporary housing of some kind.
Okay.
There's people living in RVs and vans. I've seen, some of the videos I've seen, like in California. I mean, there's people that are living in I want to say, living in a van down by the river. Don't want to make fun of them, but there are people living in vans and stuff in these parking lots because they can't, if you're making 40 grand a year and you're living in California, I
Yeah.
mean, you're not getting a house, you
No.
know. And then inadequate and substandard housing is another big one, living in rundown, beat up places. Extended motels is a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously homeless folks. I mean, obviously the 4 to 6 million isn't all homeless, but I mean, it's a lot of people that, yeah, they're living someplace, but it's not a home. I mean, it's either some
Sure.
crappy place or they're crowded in with somebody else or living with mom and dad.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get a handle on because, again, I think supply and demand, at zero, there's a lot of demand for houses, but, you know, and maybe the definition is people that throughout like normal history would be able to house themselves and are unable to right now because of cost.
Yeah.
So, without an easy political reflex, what do you think about that? What do you think about causes and what do you think about fixes?
Well, I mean, and not in an effort to go political,
Oh,
but
I want to. I want to go political.
everything's political. Yeah, I don't know why I'm apologizing. We have a political podcast. Well, I mean, legal immigration. I mean, there's millions of people here illegally.
Okay.
They need a place to live. Now, I don't know that somebody's coming across the border, but they may not be taking the new house, but they may be taking the substandard house, or they may be taking,
Yeah.
there's only so many places to go. I think that's an issue. I think if you look at some of the places with the most the most severe shortages are often liberal run cities. And a lot of that is around regulation, and whether it be environmental regulation, whether it be, there's a lot of places that really, I was reading about, a lot of places really try to limit high density housing
Hmm.
because, it's weird because you always hear about this, like, there's a lot of people like, oh, we need more houses for people, but yeah, but don't put your apartment complex with, 5,000 people in my backyard and screw up my schools, and that's
Right.
pretty universal. I mean, that crosses party
Quarter acre
lines.
lot for me, man. Stay out of my way.
But I do think there's this that regulatory piece. And, if you think about the most severe, I was reading about like what are the most severe housing shortage areas? Well, it's areas in California, New York, it's major metropolitan areas, but it's not Dallas because in Dallas, you keep going west. Now, obviously, if you're in LA, yeah, sure, you've got some geographic barriers. I mean, you can't, you got mountains and stuff, but the restrictions around building new properties and everything else are way different, so that is a factor for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I guess you mentioned immigration. Clearly, that could be some pressure on that. I guess what I would say to that is, and this goes to my whole philosophy on immigration anyway, it's about workforce. People are not coming here so that they can be homeless and marginalized. People are coming here for jobs. We have a shortage of labor in this country, and that's going to get a lot worse for us. And so, if migration is imperiling our housing, we got to figure out a way to house them because we need the workers, because our economy needs a workforce to keep it going. So we've got to work on that. The crowding in the big cities, and yeah, you've got constraints. The regulation, I'm going to credit my younger son for opening my eyes a couple of years ago. I got to admit, I've lived in college towns and kind of suburban environments, pretty comfortable places. A few years ago, he brought to my attention how messed up zoning regulations have caused so many problems for people. And it's kind of to what you're saying, maybe not
Yeah.
regulation per se, but yeah, people protecting the status quo and wanting low density. Well, low density is expensive. It's expensive to buy it. It's expensive to maintain. It's expensive because it's a lower tax base pound for pound. You know what I mean? Like it's expensive to everybody. So higher density is the answer, but how do you get there? I think about economic drivers. I wonder why builders don't build more houses for entry level people. Like, why not? It would seem like that's a good market. And it seems to me that in our past, and I'm literally just wondering out loud, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Levittown phenomenon on Long
Yeah.
Island. In
Yep.
the post-war period, and people are like, we got all these GIs moving back coming back from the war. They got money, they got families, and builders saw ahead and built these massive, sprawly suburbs because that's what people wanted. And they had money and they cashed in on it. Why aren't we doing that? How can you have a world where you've got a $4.6 million short or 4.6 million unit shortfall of housing, and somebody doesn't see that as a market of opportunity? Maybe it's the regulation thing.
Well, I do think part of it is the scarcity caused by regulation. So in Texas, there's a lot of affordable housing. I first moved here 20 years ago. I bought a house for $120,000 and it was a, 2,000 square foot house. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job. And, that house is worth more than that now. But, there's a lot of people moving west of here and north of here and south of here, and they're putting in affordable houses. But I think if you're in California and it's like an act of Congress to build a neighborhood and like you're a developer, you better get every stinking cent you can get out of every one of those houses because you're not going to do five more developments. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's a scarcity thing, really, to me, is what drives that price. And so, okay, I can only build in this 5 acre area, and these things are going to be mega McMansions.
Yeah. I put some of it back to the housing crisis of 2008 and the whiplash in the market. And then with that, if you think about it, man, roll the clock back. I'm going to show my age. I bought a house in 2003 that I could not buy today. It wouldn't happen. I bought it as a no down. They gave me a mortgage for 80% of the purchase price and a home equity loan for 20% of the purchase price. And I was good for it. I could make the payments, but I didn't have any money to bring into that. I walked out of closing. I think they finagled a way to give me a check for a couple of extra bucks at closing, and I borrowed 100% of the house, and that was our ramp onto the market. And we've benefited over the years after the housing crisis and this era of profoundly low interest rates, profoundly low. I don't want to admit what my current house mortgage, like I can't afford to pay my house off because the mortgage like is less than my money market funds receive. And
Yeah.
and yet now we're moving back more towards normal. The interest rates are high the last couple of years compared to where we've been. They're modest in historical context in this country. And so some of what we're experiencing right now, I think the quote housing shortage right now, I think it's a little overblown. I think we're in a readjustment phase and moving out of this colossally low interest rate environment to a more normal interest rate environment. And I think we're going to lose some people along the way. I think that's some of what we're experiencing is just pain in transition back to a more normal worldview.
Well, I was thinking about this podcast and the topic, and I forget what article. I mean, I read that article. I forget where it was at, but was it a Post article?
Washington Post, yeah.
Yeah, the communist Washington Post. No, just kidding.
Owned by a
Uh,
billionaire who's cozying up to your boy. But anyway,
yeah, he just donated $1 million, so that's good. No, one of the things it talked about was like enabling lower affordable housing. And it said, one of the things it said, they need to provide less options, more standardization. They can keep the costs low for everybody. And you're going to think I'm either don't have a job or I'm a nerd, but I've been reading about this and I found it really, really interesting. I was stationed in Croatia for a bit, the military, and it used to be part of the Soviet Union. You get in the outskirts of any like former Soviet city, and it is row upon row of the ugliest ass, housing buildings because it was all former Soviet Union. They would build these housing units to house everybody, and they're cheap, and they needed it to be cheap. And you get, would you like Model A, Model A, or Model A? Like there's not any choices. It's like very like, but it's all around that. And okay, it's affordable and all that, but then 20 years ago, it looks like you're living in a prison, and 20 years later, you look like you're living in a prison. And part of me is like, well, obviously when you think of like privatized investment and giving people choices, if you're trying to force a choice so that you can save money and make it affordable for everybody, you're going to wind up with some crap in a lot of ways.
yeah.
But one of the countries I read about, and you have somewhat of a connection to this country, South Korea. I've been to South Korea several times. I lived there for about a year, years ago. But since I've gone back, especially you go to like Seoul, I mean, it is row upon row of apartment building, but they don't look like Soviet style crap apartments. They look freaking awesome.
Mm.
And I was reading about their whole process around it. And it's like, they don't have a lot of land mass. They got a lot of people. They're surrounded by mountains, so you're limited just naturally in how far you can build. But I'm probably butchering and oversimplifying the article I was reading about it, but it was like, they purposely looked at, okay, we're going to house people, but we're going to have to go up. That's the only way we're going to do this, and we're going to make it affordable for everybody. But the way we're going to make it affordable and appealing is through competition and building killer apartment complexes where, yeah, maybe smaller or something, and you can afford it, but we're going to have pools and amenities and features, and people are going to want to live. Like, you got to create something people are going to want to move to, because if you create something that is affordable, but it's a piece of crap and nobody wants to live there, it's not going to catch on. And
Right. Or you create an environment where the minute people can trade out of it, they will.
right.
And it becomes a boat anchor. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seemed like it was a combination of, they brought in like these big companies and contractors and got them involved and got them to like see the money making element of this, but then they started competing because you got these massive builder companies in South Korea that compete against each other, and then they're competing against each other and providing better and better stuff and cheaper stuff. And I don't know, it seems like there's lessons there. You get some of these big cities. I mean, if you think about it, if you took one of these, LA, you can't see any place anyways because it's full of smog. I mean, what if you raised a few neighborhoods and filled it with 30-story high rises with all kinds of amenities? It's like that could house a lot of people inexpensively.
I hear what you're saying. I got to go to history on this, though. There was a movement, public housing has been just a horrible, and I know that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about market
Yeah, no,
housing,
I'm talking about buying it. Yeah, not giving it. Yeah.
but kind of that forced perspective. And it runs a little against the grain of the American spirit, I think. It's been a problem in places where they've tried this. There's a great example in the city of Detroit that there was this whole movement. Mies van der Rohe at Chicago, Illinois Institute of Technology, and these super blocks. And, there was kind of a post war vision of this. And the Soviet version of that was kind of the worst of it. But the same sort of thing, like people don't want to live in homogeneity very well. And I think that's particularly true in America.
Well, but that's, I guess, my point is, at least as I read about it, and others could correct that, but as I read about, that was their angle. Like, no, we don't want to give everybody option A, and A. We want to give people all kinds of variety and opportunity, but you incentivize private companies to go build this way. There's all kinds of incentives. You could steer people in any direction you want. But if
Right.
if the goal was we've got limited land mass, let's go up, let's come up with incentives to provide really good options to the consumers, and then you create a level of competition. I mean, I guess my point is, I think it's theoretically possible, but it's back to your something you mentioned earlier, like you got to think outside the box to come up with a solution. It can't just be like, well, and I think of, okay, hey, Mr. Developer, okay, we've approved you to build, we've approved that you're going to kill the endangered speckled worm, and we're going to let you build on this 30 acres in, this part of Los Angeles. But, could you give them some kind of an incentive? But I tell you, if you could come up with a model that gets, 15 high rises in here, I don't know. It's just like, is there a way to make that to where it would work? But
I hear you. And I don't mean to play the history card on this, but I gotta say the thing that worries me about that is I go back to the 2008 housing crisis. And for what it's worth, if you haven't delved into that, it is a fascinating story because there's culpability on both sides. It launched actually under the Clinton administration, and they had this kind of vision. We want to create easy ramp to housing for everybody. And on the other side, the Republicans wanted to do away with regulation on banks and financial institutions. So they backed off on the regulations on banks at the same time that the liberals in the Clinton administration and others were saying, let's juice the housing market by subsidizing things. We're going to give Fannie Mae like lots of runway to create things. And so you had kind of a perfect storm. And it was interesting. I was just keenly focused on this back in the day in 2008, 2009. And literally there was enough material there that both sides could point at the other and say, you did this. Clinton, you told the lenders to turn on the tap and let anybody, but you'd let people that could fog a mirror borrow money, like me in 2003, actually. And by the same token, you haven't regulated the banks, you haven't, like, so both sides kind of opened the floodgates and you wound up with a real bubble. I worry about that, Kyle. I worry about fixing the 4 million housing unit shortfall now by three different solutions that amplify each other that people try. Like, how are we going to get there? what are the barriers to doing that right now? Well, regulation is one. I think it's a bigger problem than that. I think financing is a big issue. We got people getting used to paying interest rates that are a lot higher than you and I had to deal with when we were in that stage of life.
Well, but
Um,
wait a second. I thought you said a minute ago you thought the interest rates are historically not that high.
they're not that high now, but they're higher. They're like we've been in like a freak low period for 15 years.
Yeah.
And coming out of that is what I'm talking about, kind of right sizing that back to normal. So I don't know, what are the fixes? Do you lower interest rates? Do you incent the kind of building that you want? How do you fix that? And how do you fix it without devaluing? Because this is the thing. You and I are voters, and we're people that pay attention to this. And as much as we're thinking about the macro thing, I promise you, you don't want a 20-story middle income development built a block behind your house. You don't. I mean, you don't want to see your property value tank like that. How do you
Well,
get people? Where are you going to
but
put them?
well, again, that goes to you got to incentivize somebody to build something nice. Yeah, if they build a Soviet style gulag behind my house and they fill it full of folks that are, they're paying the rent, yeah, it's going to suck. But if it looks like a apartment complex in Miami Beach, maybe my value goes up. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm not picking on you, but I'm going to pick on you.
right.
Like you said a minute ago, like I don't get why people are upset. I mean, things are going good, and I've one of the things I'm excited about this administration, and you know what, you may 4 years from now, you may be like, are you happy now? Great job. Maybe I won't be, but I'm excited about some of these people trying things and doing something, shaking things up. I feel like there's so much apathy in a government level, like, well, this is hard, and I don't know, well, this is going to create something, and I just feel
Yeah,
like the government just like sits on their hands because everything's too freaking hard, and it's like, I don't know, let's go try some crap and see what happens.
yeah. No, I get that, and I think that being a little more bold is good. I worry about. I probably am talking in circles, but I do worry. I think what happened in the run up between, say, 2000 and 2008 was that you had, oh man, I've had too much rum. There's like a family story. My wife and I did something like we both turned on the, the sump pump. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
right.
I turned that on. Oh, you turned. Oh wait, I turned it on and you turned it off. Like the maybe our producer can edit in an explanation of what the hell I'm talking about there. But I
No,
guess what I'm saying is
it's a good analogy. It's just like people just keep feeding the fire, and yeah. Well,
I
my
worry that it's that if we try to fix it three different ways, what we wind up with is, yeah, well, we fix the immediate problem, but you sow seeds of some real problems, and there is no way you can blame the Democrats nor the Republicans solely for what happened in 2008. What you had was this kind of unholy alliance of two different philosophies trying to approach the same problem. We wanted people to have access to affordable housing. We wanted families to own their houses and have the American dream. And so the Democrat solution was we're going to lower the standards, we're going to press the lenders to give money to anybody. And the Republican side was we're going to incent it to the banks to dump money on the table. And you wind up with this really crazy bubble that happened. I worry about that. If we try to solve this thing three ways, are we gonna are we gonna blow up the system? I worry about that.
Yeah. Well, it's I've talked about my crazy neighbor before. He used to be a bank examiner and has taught me a lot about how that whole thing works. And ultimately, if you're a bank, you're selling money. You're
Right.
renting out money, and the more risk you're willing to take, the bigger the return. But if everybody goes for this high return, high risk stuff and it all goes to crap, then somebody's holding the bag, and I think that's some of what, like, obviously that's why you need those layers to make sure that not everybody goes after it. Like, man, I don't know if you ever met anybody that had a interest only loan back in that day. Like, what the hell are you thinking there? But those people were doing that all over the place.
So my administrative assistant, when I was in California, she was telling me this story. It was interesting because like everybody had a story like this, especially in California. She and her husband had bought a place for like 750, like 750 grand. They bought a house for just on the verge of the market collapse. And then, 2 years later, their house was worth $375,000 and they've got a $750,000 mortgage. And she said, yeah, we called the bank and we said the keys are on the kitchen counter because we're not going to lug around with us $350,000 of ghost debt for the rest of our lives. And, she's saying this, it was surreal to me because, the idea of we just chose to surrender our house and walk away from our mortgage, like, like that is anathema to the way that I think about the world to her and to lots of people in that area. Like, yeah, that's the strategy. And I got to admit that if I was holding that bag, yeah, I think I would have said the keys are on the counter. We're out of here and we'll start over and we'll wait our 7 years for our credit to clear. But it's going to take me a hell of a lot longer than 7 years to pay off 350 grand in debt that just evaporated.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the fear of inflation, right? That,
Yeah.
not that we're there yet. Who was I talking to? I can't remember. Some country, and like they had to keep printing bills. Like they printed a $1,000 bill and then and not dollars, but I forget what the currency was, but $1,000 bill, and they printed $1 million bill, and then they printed $1 billion bill. Like, holy crap. I mean, obviously we're not at that place, but that's a real fear. Like what the hell would happen if your money was completely worthless?
Yeah. The hyperinflation thing, it's been talked about a lot. Weimar Germany was the same deal. They had this hyperinflation thing, and a wheelbarrow full of dollar or Reichmarks would pay for a loaf of bread or something.
I think it was
What?
Hungary, maybe, that he visited. That Hungary. Oh yeah, yeah. The Hungarian tingo was the national currency. I'm probably mispronouncing that. And during hyperinflation became worthless. At its peak in July 1946, prices doubled every 15 hours. So the largest banknote issued was the 100 quintillion pingo.
Oh man. Well, it puts an incentive on you to not wait to go to the grocery store, right? Like, let's go now.
I guess you could say you were a quintillionaire.
Well, I maintain this. I hope that the new administration has a solution and something that works well. I hope that they're able to create a way for people to buy houses. I think it's good for our economy, but
I don't know that that's at the top of everybody's wish list, though, Republican or Democrat. I mean, you hear about it, but I don't know that it's something you don't really hear about it that much. I mean, I had to kind of dig a little bit.
don't you think that it's a big deal? It's one of those things that depending on where you are in life, like it's either
Yes,
the biggest damn thing or it's like, yeah, so what?
right.
It really pits generations against each other.
Yeah. Well, and you know what I find it's just I guess a matter of life that our housing prices have gone up a lot, and I don't know, 6, 7 years ago we were looking for a new house, and the prices that we saw for houses were just crazy, and we had to stretch to get the house we're in, and I thought it was a ton of money we spent, and then now 6 years later, I mean it's damn near double in price. I mean, and I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's way over the top, but it's like, I'm not complaining, but it's like if I was younger, our price 6 years ago was a lot. Now it's completely out of touch, and then, I think about it all. Tom, you should probably see this too. Like I watched the number on Zillow and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to sell this place and move to rural Mississippi or something and buy a trailer. I mean, that's all you could
Kyle,
do.
I
It's like,
literally never have thought I need to sell my home and move to a trailer in Mississippi. I can say that with absolute certainty.
it hasn't been a thought for real long, but no. But like it's like, okay, great, you make money, but you're gonna have to live someplace and everything else is crazy money too.
Right. Like the next chess move is scary. Right. Whatever if we're making some huge gain on this place, if I don't want to stay here for the rest of my life, the other thing that's gaining is the place that I want to move
Yeah.
when I retire.
When I moved here, I moved to Texas, it'll be 20 years ago this spring. And like I said, I bought a house, it was like tract homes, not super nice, $125,000, 1,900 square feet, 3 bed, 2 bath. That same development, like if I would have splurged for 172,000, I could have got a 4,000 square foot home, and then it's $172,000. And, now, you look at that and you think that wasn't that long ago. I mean, I'm not talking like 1980s, but like you're not getting anything in that zip code now. It's just the movement on the prices of, and this isn't that much of an inflationary area in houses. I mean, it's still pretty cheap. You get out west or something. Like when I moved here 20 years ago, there were people moving here from from California. Like we got a guy at our office that moved from San Jose, and they were like, "Oh man, the rumors like he sold his house for over $1 million, and he bought some mansion, and threw $500,000 in the bank, and it's like, I don't know that that is possible anymore. I mean, I think it probably is a little bit. I mean, certainly if you came from, again, if you went from California to the trailer in Mississippi, yeah, I'm sure you could do that. But like, I don't know that there's any place with that big a disparity. I think everything's expensive, right?
I think so we were in Utah, the house that we had there, we did fine on it. It appreciated over the time we were there. During the pandemic, I watched the transaction on that house. It doubled in about 2 years, and like just through the roof. And I think what you're going to find is you're going to find continued price increases in attractive places. People ability to work remotely has changed the market a lot.
I've told you this story, but I always laugh because 6, 7 years ago we bought a camper, little bumper pull trailer, paid like 14,000 bucks, and I knew it was small, but I'm like, okay, I'm never going to see this money again. This thing's going to be worthless one day. But then, we stopped using it as much. COVID comes along, and all of a sudden, somebody offered us $16,000 for it. I'm like, how the hell is this possible? I thought this thing was a depreciating asset. I wound up using it for 6 years and sold it for more than I bought it. And then, because then a lot of people were buying them to live in them, and I'm thinking, I want to say, lady, I couldn't live in this for more than 2 days. I mean, a 2 day weekend, I'm like, I'm ready to get the heck out of this thing. And this lady is like, well, I think I'm going to move this wall over here, and then I'm going to put this over here. And I'm like, lady, this isn't a house. I mean, you start moving walls, this thing is going to fall into pieces. I'm like, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't know that we've solved it, but I think it's an interesting concept to talk about something that doesn't have, it's a problem for everybody. It's a problem for America.
Yeah.
And how do you approach it from a political standpoint? What are the interventions that you make? I hope we don't wind up in a case like we were in 2008, which was a really perilous time for us.
Well, your guy on the Post article, the small town, what did he say? He wanted to open up low cost affordable housing and have Trump call them all Trump Towers. So the Trump Towers of Cabrini Green or whatever. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.